My name's Graham Potts. I've been judging for 25 years, and since 2007, when I qualified as an international judge, I've been fortunate to judge at the London 2012 Olympics and was the chairman of judges in Rio 2016 Olympic Games. We'll now move into a presentation on improving as a judge. So, to improve as a judge, how do I do that? This presentation is my thoughts on how we can improve as a judge. Sergio has given a good description of what a good judge should be, and it must be an aspiration of all judges to be a good judge and then to become a better judge. So how can we improve ourselves to become a better judge? How can we help ourselves to move from being a new judge to becoming a good judge to becoming a better judge? In my view or opinion, the things we can do to help us become good and then to become better are much the same. What will matter is the level of detail that you put in and the practice that you put in. I've split my thoughts into 4 areas. So, first area, study, which we'll look at first in a minute, then evaluation, then practice, and then contribution. So taking study first. Well, what is study? It's the devotion of time and attention to gaining knowledge, especially by means of books. Study pretty much underpins everything, doesn't it? You think you know it all because you passed a test, but think again. A test doesn't cover all the rules, procedures, rule changes, interpretations given over time. And we don't take tests every year. So studying is an ongoing task for which you use your main study tools. And the main tools for studying are, firstly, your eyes. Very, very useful tool, your eyes. Written material. We have lots of written material. We have a judge guidebook. This gives information on procedures and processes that we like to follow. It gives a bit more interpretation around some of the rules and why we do some things, and good guidance, as it says, a guidebook. Rules and interpretations. Well, new rules come in every now and then. We've seen recently this year the introduction of new rules for barebow bow style in target archery. So we need to know those. And we need to understand the interpretations that are issued from time to time relating to certain rules to make it clearer for us to follow them. And then we have judge newsletters, and these are really very helpful again. Good source of updated procedural information. Sometimes we might need to adjust a procedure that we thought worked well, so we'll issue it in a newsletter and change it in the guidebook later. And you need to keep checking things. You need to keep looking back at these things. You need to make sure rules and interpretations, any updates are seen. These will come out from time to time in newsletters, so you will be able to follow them. And we do have an additional tool, which is e-learning, which is a good refresher on target archery at the moment, but planned to go further. The second main tool for studying is your ears. And how can we use our ears to good effect? Well, mainly through the application of watching videos. Your ears and your eyes are both useful here. Imagine yourself as a line judge or target judge in those roles. How would you approach the role? How would you react to what you see? If you look at the major events, particularly Olympic Games, of course, the camera might focus or will focus quite rightly on the athletes. But from time to time, we do get the opportunity to see a judge in action, and that will help seeing what some of the judges in the world can do. And I'll just take you through some examples I've picked up from the World Cup final 2018 Samsung men's recurve and the European Championships 2018 Men's Compound Team Final. So for the first one, in the first men's quarter-final match at World Cup Final 2018, watch and hear the line judge.
The target judge for this session is
Maçın hedef hakemi
Alexandre Vecchio Passerini.
Well, you will shoot second. Okay. Are you both ready? Both ready?
Target one shooting first.
So target one is shooting first. Range is clear. Let's begin the match.
Well, here we go. It's Kim Woo-jin of Korea on target one, and Steve Vire of the Netherlands on target two. Kim qualified by winning the stage in Shanghai.
The line judge gives clear communication to the athletes. It's clear, it's concise, and it's correct. Did the judge check the athletes were ready to commence? Of course, you could see the judge. Important. We need to make sure the athletes are ready. Did the judge give clear indications to the director of shooting or the target judge, scorers, spotters, commentators, and the crowd? Of course, through using the relevant hand signals, particularly that we use correctly. So that's a good example of how a line judge can operate. In the second video, the men's fourth quarter-final match from the 2018 World Cup final, about 51 minutes into the video, you can watch the target judge. What do you see?
Let's have a listen to
Target one.
the target judge.
10, 9, 8, 27. Okay. Target 2, 10, 10, 9, 29.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
So we see here a clear calling of each arrow value. Very, very precise in the call. We see the judge pointing to each arrow as it's called, giving clarity and confirmation. And we see the judge checking the scorecard each time after calling each target's arrows, making sure there's no error on the scorecard and that the result will be correct. And finally, we have the European Championships 2018 Compound Men's Team Final, the start of the fourth end of shooting. What do you see?
Well, here we go. The line judge has declared the range safe to shoot, and France will shoot first here. 6 arrows from each team to decide the gold medal here in Legnica.
Judging holding a line, so I guess we'll wait a little longer.
We had declared the range safe, so there's an issue down at the target end of the range. And it looks like they're just checking the scores again. Remember, the French were downgraded by a single point in the second end.
Les aléas du direct.
I'm still not completely sure which arrow would have been degraded because
Ladies and gentlemen, please stop
yeah, there you
this
go.
moment because there seems to be some misunderstanding about the score. We come back as soon as we know.
Well, now it's switched around for the French team. They benefit from a downgrade from the British team.
No, I think the French team has got their point back.
That means in this case that France has
Because previously the second end said it was a 57, now it says it's 58.
Right, yeah, so
a slight mistake from the scorers or maybe the judge, but everything should be fine again now, and that just means that GVR is gonna start off this end. And like I said before, they can really put the pressure on now because they're only trailing by 1 point, which is still possible.
yeah, so an unusual set of circumstances here in Legnica.
The French had an arrow downgraded in the second end, which put Great Britain in the lead. They've had that point restored. And this all went on behind the scenes. I don't think even the archers knew about it.
I'm not sure.
So the French lead by a single point.
So the director of shooting starts the shooting process, but suddenly presses the emergency stop. What does the line judge do? Well, bear in mind the line judge at this point doesn't know quite why this has occurred. They remain calm. They immediately stop the teams and ask them to step back. The issue itself was one of a scoring one from an earlier end. This was resolved, and the line judge then made sure the teams were ready and that the process for shooting for the final end was clear still to both teams. Checks they are ready, and once they are ready, they start. So overall, what do these videos show us? They show us about being clear and concise in the information to the athletes. Keep them informed. It's very important. Check to ensure no mistakes are made. Checking at the targets particularly. And remain calm in front of the athletes and make sure they are ready for shooting. Now, this latter point, often there is an element of nervousness in ourselves, and quite rightly so. We're out there with those athletes, they're nervous, we'll be nervous as well. But within that, you've got to try and take a step back and remain calm and make sure that the athletes are very comfortable with what's happening next when there is an issue. So I move to the second key area that I've identified here that might help, which is evaluation. An evaluation of performance particularly. Well, what can we do? What tools are there that can help us evaluate our performance at events and learn from what we or others have actually done? Firstly, we have an evaluation from the chairman of judges on our performance. This evaluation should be discussed with you before leaving the event. That's so that you can understand why the report says what it says. And you get the opportunity then to ask for the guidance on the weaker areas that have been identified by your chairman of judges. That guidance hopefully will then help you develop that area of concern and you can perform better. As a chairman of judges, I find this a very useful tool, as my aim is to ensure all my judges can develop to perform at the highest level, and we can learn something from every event. Second thought here is about self-evaluation. Self-evaluation is a very valuable tool, but you have to be honest with yourself. Don't fall into that trap of being, oh yeah, I'm really, really good and over complimentary about your performance. But equally, don't get over critical. Sometimes we tend to criticize ourselves more than others will criticize us. So find a balance in evaluating your performance, but you're going to have to work out that balance yourself. And then use this to think about how you might change how you would do something. And think about the reaction of others to what you did do. How did they feel about your decisions? How did they respond to your communication? Simple one is thinking about giving the value of an arrow in the target. How did you do that? What did you say? And how did the athletes react to it? Particularly, actually, when you give the lower value, because often that's not the one they want. So think about just the reaction of the others. You've given the right information, the correct decision. You need to make sure that they are comfortable with their understanding of it. And then review your own performance at the end of the day. It's quite good to take some time just at the end of each day at an event, just to sit back and think, well, what happened today? What did I do? And could I have done it better? It's not a bad idea. I've done it myself as both judge and chairman of judges and taken time to consider how better I might have conducted myself in carrying out a task. And it's helped, and it's made me think through something to do differently the following day. So it's worth just spending that time yourself to self-evaluate how you've done during the day. The third one that I've come up in this section is about team feedback. So as judges, we have team meetings during competition days. It's a bit like being in an office, really, where you have your team meetings to talk about what's happening and what's going on, or you have a wider team meeting. You have these team meetings to look at what's happening, what's happened today, what is going to happen tomorrow, or what's going to happen later today. Meetings are generally morning and evening at events. So morning, looking at what we're going to be doing, evening, looking at what's happened during the day, and then thinking through a bit for the following day and what we can learn. But they also give you that chance to learn from the experience of others. People will be asked to consider things that maybe have happened and to explain them, just so that the team could understand why something was done. And if you don't understand it, don't be afraid to ask a question, because the only way you learn is by understanding it. So ask the questions. Don't feel you should know that. It doesn't always work like that. And all of us as chairman of judges are quite happy to sit there and take the questions from you and to come up with the answers for you. And listen intently. Use your ears again. Listen intently. And as I say, ask the questions. Finally, under evaluation, and this one might be a little more tricky for some of you, a little more tricky for some of us, perhaps where we don't have good contact with our own international team or coaches. But if possible, seek feedback from this group. They see you in a different light at these events, maybe, and they will hear things maybe that you don't hear from others. So how do they see you at an event? How are you perceived on the field of play? They can give that insight, which as a judge team, we may not see. The next area of improvement is something that the athletes pay particular attention to, I think you'll find, and that's practice. Because that's something the athletes do a lot of. And perfect practice makes perfect. And maybe not always. We may never reach total perfection, but the athletes practice and train hard, so why shouldn't we as judges? So what can we do? How can we practice? So what can we practice? And these are my thoughts, but I'm sure you can come up with other things that you might want to include here and work on. So first of all, we got to know how to use the tools we use for our job. Tape measure and laser measure. Laser measures particularly field 3D archery. Tape measures more on a target field of play. But make sure you know how to read the output or the scale when you're checking the distances, when you're checking face sizes. If you don't know how to read it, it's going to take you longer to do the job. Understand your piece of equipment. Magnifying glasses and dental mirrors. Well, magnifying glass, we don't need to have arrows in target faces to practice using a magnifying glass. We can use anything. We can just look at things around the house, get a clearer view of them, work out whether it's touching something else, little things like that, quite useful to do. And the dental mirror, well, if you're going to use one, as we all know, they're very difficult to use correctly. So worth practicing using a dental mirror to get it right about how you can use it if you need to use it. I've used them before, and yes, I practiced with them because it is necessary. The other thing I would add here is that in some instances indoors, we can find that a torch, the addition of a torch, when you're looking with the magnifying glass, is quite useful to get a better clarity of the position of the arrow. If you're going to do that, once again, take time to practice holding the magnifying glass and the torch. How are you going to manage this? Make sure you know. The last thing you want to do is spend ages up at the target just trying to work out how you're going to hold it while the archers are patiently waiting for you to make a decision. Of course, the other main piece of kit that we use a lot of is vernier scales or calipers to assess which arrow is nearest the middle. Know how to use it. Make sure they can lock in position. Check the equipment. And just make sure you know how to lock it up, move it across from one target to another. You can do this with a couple of things at home, and you can measure distance between one thing and another and take it and see whether the gap on something else is different. It can work, and it could be quite useful. And I would also take this chance to make sure the tools you use are fit for purpose. We give our cars an annual service, don't we? Why don't we give the tools we use in archery an annual service? I think it would help, and it would mean that when you go to an event, you're ready for whatever comes up. So, going further with practice, target judge role. Now, this is difficult to do outside the competition for obvious reasons. We haven't got targets in our back gardens with lots of arrows in them. And here's an idea. Because you're already putting the magnifying glass and measuring tools practice to use, you're trying all that out and you're working on that. Look at the other aspect of the target judge role, which is the scoring. So print blank match play scorecards, have someone else fill the arrow values in, and then add them up and complete them. See how long it takes you, and use individuals, teams, and mixed team scorecards. At the end of the day, as the target judge, you are responsible for the scoring of a match. So test yourself. It's well worth it. Checking the values and the scores are part of the process of being a target judge. So this could be really quite useful to do. And then we look at the line judge role. Well, again, difficult to do when we're not in competition, admittedly, but what can we do? Study the time limits that we use in match play. Think about particularly the shoot-offs, what we do with mixed teams, what we do with teams. Think about how you're going to explain that to the athletes to make sure that they are comfortable with the process when we get to a shoot-off, just to make sure that they know that process. Rehearse the order of shooting requirements. For example, target 2 is winning 2-0, so target 1 is shooting first. Of course, that's a recurve match. Think about how you give a red or yellow card in match play. Of course, yellow cards only in teams, of course. But what do you say? How quick do you have to be? For example, if in a team match, an archer crosses, you show the yellow card, you call the name of the team, you say what they've done. So yellow card, team X, crossing. So they know what's happened. And the coach needs to react to that along with the archers. And then think about taking time to get used to standing and watching one athlete or team at a time and then switching back. Just, you can stand there, focus on an object for sort of 30, 40 seconds, 20 seconds if it's individual, of course, but use one object to focus on and then switch your focus to another object immediately. You need to look attentive on the field of play. Looking up at the sky shows you what's happening up there, but it doesn't show you what's happening on the line, on the shooting line, which is where you need your real focus to be. Body language. Well, we can practice body language to a degree, but we can also learn about it, which is perhaps more important. And there is an excellent presentation on this available to you in the judging attitudes in the judge training aids available on the World Archery website. And you need to think about your own body language and whether you need to consider making adjustments. Body language is a big part of how we portray ourselves at an event. And we should be looking at that and thinking, do I need to move to being looking perhaps more positive, more attentive, all these sorts of things. And the body language presentation gives you some great ideas on that type of thing. So moving to the fourth area, contribution. This is more about the thinking about the softer and the usual everyday life skills. So being open-minded, fair, informed, we need to know, polite, not officious, but obviously making correct decisions and communicating them, approachable, focused, able to act quickly, and alert. These are kinds of things we do every day in our everyday lives, perhaps not just part of archery, but in our work or with our families and with friends. And we need to be able to take these things into how we are as a judge. There is a saying, you are who you are. So think about who you are, how you are. Sometimes we have to face up to people not liking what we say and reacting badly or ignoring us. How do you react to that? Because the one thing you need to do on the field of play is retain the trust of those around you. We have a lot of people that we work with at an event, you know, athletes particularly, the coaches, the other officials, the organisers, the results teams, sports presentation, and the list can go on a lot longer. So all of these people look to us to apply rules correctly and fairly as well across the competition. So we need to live up to that expectation, and we need to retain their trust and work with them, because all of us working together make the events the best they can be. When we're dealing with difficult situations with coaches and athletes, how do you get the message across? How is a message received? So all of the skills mentioned earlier, the being approachable, listening, being fair, they all will help. And think about how your messages have been received previously will help you in future delivery of key messages. I learn every single time I'm a chairman of judges from how I work with the coaches and the athletes and all the other organisers that I've mentioned earlier. I learn more every time. And the same should go for all of us. We learn each time we work. Long days on a field of play for judges can be stressful. I mean, I think we're all there that on many days we're there longer than individual athletes and teams. Sometimes the coaches are there with us for the same length of time if they've got athletes performing during the day. But at the end of the day, we often have to make and should be able to make decisions as sharply, quickly, and correctly as we did at the outset of the day. So strong physical and mental fitness, which kind of work together, are a great help in coping with such days. And then maybe something to try at practice at home. At the end of a long day at work, long day in the office, long day out on the road, whatever you've been doing, find something to concentrate your mind on for half an hour or so. It just may help you when you have stressful decisions at the end of a long day's judging. It's all about being able to concentrate on something at the end of a long day. I have a few final thoughts. What do we want to be? I think as judges, we all want to be the best. And how can we do this? Well, it's logical, isn't it? We need to be prepared, and we can use study, practice, evaluation, and contribution to help us prepare. And remember, even the very best judges make mistakes. It's how they're handled that often can define the difference between being a good judge and being an excellent one, and what you learn from them. So that concludes my presentation on how to improve as a judge. I hope you've all found that reasonably useful. I'm sure you have other ideas yourselves of things you can do to help, but use it wisely, prepare, you need to know, you need to prepare, and you can get better and better and better. And a good, strong team working together makes a big difference at an event. I wish you all well with your judging, and have a good day.